Hello there, YouTube. This is the Handsome Crayon, and I'm back again with another fanfiction reading. So, without further ado, let's begin. This is Graphs by Mozzarella, Chapter 4. You're a Big Help. Quote, Idle rainbows are the awesome's workshop. End quote. No major settlements existed beyond the great peak of Canterlot Mountain. There was no real reason for one to be there unless there was some need for privacy. Most stays were temporary, seeing as living off the land takes far more effort than getting what you need from a polite yet greedy vendor in the market. Ponies could go their whole lives without seeing the shorter, but by no means short, ridges on the side opposed to Canterlot. Those who had, however, would find meteorological phenomenon similar to the everfree forest. Clouds drifted lazily over the light forest below, all on their own. Luckily for the two Scion Pegasus, there was no pony there on this particular day. They found a decent-sized cloud high above the dent in equestrian known as Canterlot Valley. The stallion eagerly shrugged off his saddlebag, which had nearly enough force to penetrate the cloud as it fell. The mare cantered over to the edge to survey their home for the next couple of days. This should be good, Dash thought aloud. There are enough clouds floating around for us to practice with. Blitz rolled his wings around uncomfortably, angrily eyeing the luggage that had made his flight over a mountain less than enjoyable. We're using clouds in the performance? Yeah. Can you think of a flying competition that didn't use clouds? No, he deadpanned. I can only remember one flying competition, and I wasn't even there for that one. Well, ponies use clouds for these things, she said as she laid on her stomach. Now shut up and give me the scroll. Blitz grunted and rummaged through the pack. He emerged with a severely creased piece of paper and set it down next to Dash. And the quill? She added, not moving to get it on her own. Her clone rolled his eyes and retrieved the writing utensil. She sighed again as he dropped it onto the paper. And the ink? As you wish, Your Majesty, Blitz mumbled on his third walk to the bag. You want me to fetch you a leaf and a fan? How about a massage? The bottle of black liquid landed with a poof next to the mare. She grinned and uncapped ink. Nah, I'm good for now. Dash proceeded to pick up the delicate feather with her teeth and steadied the tip between her hooves. She gently lowered it to the wet end. Are you sure you don't want that massage, Dashy? Dash's eyes popped wide open and spat out the quill in her shot. She nudged the ink off the cloud's edge, and she watched as it fell, froze in her inward conversation with her more lewd half. Yes, I'm sure. Come on, the voice purred. Don't you think he's earned it? I don't want that. Stop chewing your lip and think that again. Smooth, droned Blitz sarcastically from behind her. He leaned over just in time to see the minute black spot on the ground. What was that all about? Dash shook her head and pushed the paper off the edge too. Nothing. Blitz raised an eyebrow at her sudden nervous tone. Weren't we gonna plan out our routine on that thing? Dash glanced at the slowly falling scroll, rocking back and forth on its way down. No. No. We don't need that stupid thing. I already have it worked out anyway. Wait, I don't even get a say in how we're doing this? Nope, Dasher replied frankly. Besides, that was the boring part. Now we get to fly. Blitz conversed his lack of a role in decision-making and decided he'd be okay with skipping the boring part. "All right," he said, flourishing his hoof towards the expansion of the valley below them. "Lead the way." "But Twilight—" "No buts," Twilight replied to her assistant, who sat atop a pile of homework, one would expect from an evil college professor. "You need to learn these things. What if I, what if I, what if I ever need your help in an emergency?" "Then I'll call the hospital like a normal pony," Spike grumbled. "What if it's more urgent than that? What if I need immediate attention?" "Oh, please." The dragon threw up his arms. "What's gonna happen to you while you're alone in the library? Are you gonna get a paper cut through an artery?" "It could happen. Quick, where's my carotid artery?" Spike rolled his eyes and pointed to the center of the unicorn's neck. The dragon may not have been as crude as Twilight, but a good year or two in a library can grant one a sudden large amount of knowledge. There was also an encyclopedia that he had been forced to read through the day before. "Because you mortally wound yourself in the library on a daily basis. How could I have forgotten?" "Is that sarcasm? I guess I didn't assign enough work then." She moved to collect more literature for him. Out of the corner of his eyes, she saw him pout and return to his studies. A small stream of smoke flew out of his nostrils, and the air around him became blurry with heat. A satisfying smirk across her muzzle as she cantered up the stairs to her current project. She had begun to prepare a magically secure safe to guard certain possessions that some ponies seem to always find in the worst possible times. Some jewels, some notes, her diary that was more about studies than her own thoughts, and maybe even a few books that needed to be hidden. One such book was laid out upon her desk. It just so happened that some useful notes on protective spells were found within it. It also just so happened that she stumbled upon a familiar section in the book and got sidetracked. The section just so happened to be about duplication. "I know I'm right. I shouldn't do this. I just shouldn't," Twilight began mumbling to herself. She may have come out of her discussion with Rarity as the winner, but they were no means total victories. Her friend's longing her left quite the impression on a part of her mind remained devoted to arguing her stance even when no pony else was present. "There's just no need for it, right?" Her eyes wandered to the folded up scroll she had left on the page. She couldn't live with researching just Rarity's haphazard knot of a spell, so the magician had developed, refined, and recorded her own. Far fewer risks and far less ambiguity. She went over the steps again in her head. Aside from fatigue, the spell itself was harmless. After a second recalling of her work, she heard the sound of a door open and returned to the main room. Sometimes she forgot that she actually had a job to do. "Oh, Twilight!" sang a high-pitched voice from below. The unicorn smiled and shook her head. Some happy enthusiasm was definitely what she needed right now. "Yes, Pinky?" she said, hopping off the stairs. "Can I help you with something?" The pink pony nodded rapidly. "Yes! Remember about 3 weeks, 4 days, and 2 hours ago when we were walking outside and I was telling you about how much I wanted to make something and you asked what it was and said some kind of eclair and you asked what kind of eclair and I said, I don't know, I'll think about it?" Twilight blinked as her train of thought caught up with Miss Motormouse. Sure, why not?" "Well, I thought about the kind of eclair I wanted you to make and I need your help." Twilight sighed and laughed slightly. "What kind of eclair?" Pinky searched for the answer. There were plenty of things in her head. There were even replicas of Ponyville. However, there was nothing filed under kind of eclair. "I don't know what to call it yet. but I'm gonna put a bunch of sciencey stuff into it, and I know you're really good at science stuff, so I need you to come and help me put science stuff in my eclairs. A multitude of encounters like these had taught Twilight to just stop asking when it came to some of Pinky's schemes. For whatever reason, Pinky's plans, as she called them, seemed to always have some hidden logic in them. Logic that one would never find even if they spent a week cooped up in a basement studying them while their dragon keeps telling them silly things like, "You should eat something," or "You should probably sleep at some point." The nerve. Alright, I'll come with you and Alright, I'll come help you with your sciencey stuff. Spike, well, you're on library duty while I'm gone. But if no pony shows up, you're on study duty. Got it? She smiled as if this was an enjoyable task for the young dragon. Just go, he said. At least I'll be able to focus on reading without you mumbling about how right you are. Seriously, are you writing a paper or something? Pinky appeared over his shoulder, placing her head directly between Spike and the book. And what are you studying, Mr. Grouchy Pants? He leaned his head around the mare's massive mane without much concern. Medicine. Twilight wants me to be a doctor by Monday. Ooh, is it hard? Can I call you Dr. Spike now? Her head remained well within his personal bubble. He leaned back and looked up with an overwhelming, exasperated expression. Then it was gone, replaced by boredom and acceptance. Sure, go ahead. Yay! See ya, Dr. Spike! Pinky hopped over to the doorway. Come on, Twilight, we've got eclairs to trade. To what now? She replied worriedly. To bake! Let's go. She hit the street running. Twilight followed, much more slowly and much more cautiously. Spike heard some pony shout, For eclairs! Before he shut the library. Insane, he mumbled. They're all insane. The sky was shaking. Or maybe it was the ground. The point is that one of the two was shaking. The valley hadn't seen as much action as one would expect from the suddenly chaotic land between populated areas. The clouds occasionally expelled some excess water. One might even muster some lightning once in a while. The wind was usually rather calm. Something must have been causing a disturbance. Or two somethings. Let's go, shouted one blur to the other. They were circling in a cluster of scattered clouds, gradually growing closer to the center. Their polychromatic trails became nearly solid in the wake. One of the first blur cues, they redubbed their efforts and flew in a faster and smaller circle. The clouds kept shying away from the obscene wind, starting to expand onwards to avoid being vaporized even further. I got the top, yelled the second blur. In all fairness, it may have been the first again. Who can tell at that high speed? And so it did. The blur altered its course, turning at a right angle upwards to orbit the cloud vertically. They halted in ascension, gathering back in a compact clump. The clouds found themselves surrounded in effectively all directions, leaving them no choice but to gather at the center of the now crossing rainbow trails. And break, said what was probably the first blur, cutting away from the deadly aerial ambush. The second followed instantly, gliding straight upwards to lose momentum. Rainbow Dash angled her wings to directly oppose the air she was rudely pushing against. Sensing an opportunity, the air forced itself against her feathers, decelerating her significantly. The clouds rushed to meet her hooves, grasping them as well as the cloud could. She dipped with one wing into the makeshift landing pad and turned around while skidding to a stop. She whipped her head upwards, breathing heavily through the ferocious grin. Silhouettes against the beaming sun, a circus cloud drifted down to her with a blue head sticking over the top. What's the matter? Dash thought. Forget which way to scatter? Nah, Blitz replied with the same tone. Just felt like something to cool off. With that, he collapsed on his back just as his cloud collided with his partner's. Dash ran a hoof through her sweaty mane. That sounds good to me. She hopped across the cooler cloud and buried her face into it. The frosty sensation was a welcome shock to the mare. She settled into it to spare more of the heat her body was scrambling to get rid of. They laid there in content silence while their target clouds still hid together tightly. So, after that, we smash into it, right? Blitz inquired when he caught his breath. Dash drew her head from the chilly relief, blowing some hair from her eyes. Then we do it again. Think you can handle it? Dash challenged. The stallion bared his teeth. Do you even need to ask? They broke into laughs and hoof bumped. This is gonna be sweet. Oh yeah, come on, let's keep it up. They rolled their wings around, causing satisfying yet probably unhealthy cracks. The Pegasi approached the edge of the clouds, wings flared. On three? Blitz asked. Why wait? Dash answered. They shot off into a terrifying clump of clouds. It should not have been possible to be covered in icing already. They hadn't even made the icing, yet here it was, drying onto Twilight's mane and coat. It was also drying on the kitchen walls. Probably would have felt uncomfortable if there was time to acknowledge anything at all. Pinky, slow down. You can't do it as fast. I can't do it as fast as you. Another bowl was battered and hurled at her direction. She halted the bowl with her magic, forgetting that the batter was in motion as well, and would most likely remain in motion. It splattered into her face. We can't slow down, Twilight. Eclairs are the best, if served immediately after baking. So if we serve them quicker than immediately, they're even better. Pinky turned their dial on the mixer to the skull icon and pushed the large red button on the side. The unicorn lit her horn. And a confectionery mask was lifted off of her head and back into the bowl. That's not how it works, she said, rubbing her tingling cheek. Hey, Twilight, said Pinky under the chef's hat. What was that morality of the stuff you made? Molarity, Twilight corrected. It was about 2. Very dangerous, but you diluted it. You diluted it, right? Well, I wanted to make a quarter batch, so I only used a little milk in that one. We're gonna have to change. Is that the only thing we're gonna... Is that going to change anything? Yes, it won't be as Twilight began when her eyes widened and she dashed to the sink. Ow, 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 ow. The water alleviated her pain all too slowly. She shook her head rapidly to wash off her face. Her school experience screamed that this was no means a proper procedure for an acid spill. Her face, however, said it was what to do. Pinky shut off her industrial mixer and walked over to the unicorn sink. Hey, it's not bath time yet, silly. Twilight took the time to wash before lifting her drenched head back to the baker. Small patches of skin were exposed through the burned away hair. That was extremely dangerous. You can't just go throwing stuff around. Why did you even want that in your eclairs? Pinky tilted her head as if it was a silly question from the silly mare with the silly acid burns. Well, I was reading about some dragons that have trouble digesting rocks and gems and all, so I thought I would experiment with some desserts that could help it all go down easier. I wanted to bring Spike over too, but you sent him off to medical school. She whimpered. She wiped a small tear from her eye. I miss him already. Twilight watched incredulously as her friend wept over missing someone not a kilometer away. She gave the messy room one more glance and decided she should leave before whatever illegal machinery Pinky brought off the black market decided to blow Sugar Cube Corner to kingdom come. A ding broke Pinky's thoughts, stopping her tears. Ooh, they're ready. Come on, Twilight. You need to taste them with me. Twilight forced a smile through her terror. Actually, I'm on a diet. I can't. Sorry. Bye. Pinky grimaced, sticking her tongue out. Ew, diet? Oh well, thanks for your help, Twi. I'll take it from here. Yeah, You too, she dismissed. She dismissed, backing out the building and shutting the door. A few steps later, she broke into a gallop away from her friend's death kitchen. She felt bad for leaving such a mess, sure. However, survival instincts had a habit of taking over in these types of situations. All she could think about now was getting herself cleaned up. There were also her itching burns to tend to. About 2 minutes away from Pinky, the librarian's stamina kicked in. She slowed to a plodding walk, still a ways away from her home. That a new look? I'll never understand fashion myself. Ain't no way I'd be walking around like that. But if that's what the style, who am I to judge? Had to dro- Had the drone not been enough to identify the speaker, Twilight, frayed nervously to expand magic senses, would have told her it was Applejack sending good-humored jibes her way. She blew a strand of crusty hair out of her eyes and eyed the farmer. She wore her Stetson, as always, and the way she held herself showed that she had probably been exerting herself as well. However, having actually done work most of her life, Applejack could pull off that look. You don't like it? You don't like it? It's the newest thing. Twilight turned her body like a model, showcasing the extent of her new look. Earth Pony chuckled, shaking her head. I have to take your word for it. Anyway, what have you been up to? Twilight began to speak, but instead pointed her hoof to the column of smoke rising from the part of town she had just left. Applejack frowned. Pinky? She asked. Pinky, the unicorn agreed. Applejack could only shake her head. No more questions needed to be asked. At least, none about that. Well, I was on my way to ask you something, but it looks like you had enough for today. Twilight brightened at that. Although it was true that she could use some rest, she could use some company that made sense a bit more. Please, I've been through worse. What can I do for you? Well, it's just that the apples have been hanging on today. They ain't coming down. I figured out why. Just wanted to ask you if you might get... I can't figure out why. Just wanted to ask you to help me get them off. Or at least find out what's happened. Of course I'll help, Unicorn exclaimed. She could aid her friend and do a little plant research in the process. But first, could I borrow your water spout? It's starting to get a little hard to move. Applejack smiled gratefully. Sure thing, Twi. Let's go. She motioned behind her as they both set off to the fields. The air was unusually hot. Must have been something about being torn to pieces repeatedly. What a wuss. Two Pegasus looked up from one to the few remaining clouds that had been their playground. The intricacies of the first portion of the performance burned into their heads. They breathed heavily with the happy expression that can only come from way too much exercise. Their wings were flared comfortably for once at their sides against the falling sun. Ha! Are we awesome or what? Asked Blitz, reaching out with his wings for a high flap. Dash obliged him, slapping her wing against his. Psh! As if you even needed to say it. What? I can't compliment a pony? You looked great out there. You looked great out there. The mayor grinned. I'm not gonna argue with that, but I still couldn't have done it, most of that alone. You're a big help. Thanks. They both inhaled deeply and evened out their breath. There wasn't a sound other than the wind and the rumbling of stomachs. Hey, Blitz. Yeah? I think we skipped lunch. They took a look at each other before trotting off to where they left their bags. Blitz lifted the flag and stuck his head in. What have we got? Dash asked, having fallen to her side. You name it, Blitz said, muffled through the tough fabric. I hope you like apples. He emerged first with a sack of apples and a container of applesauce, and then several bottles of apple juice, all of which should not have fit in the bag. I think I'll eat anything right now. She twisted off the cap of one bottle and drank the sweet liquid greedily. She had just had nothing but stale cloud water for hours. It tasted like divine nectar. Blitz was already on his third apple. He passed her the sack while he hoofed over a bottle. After an acceptable amount of stuffing their faces, they finally collapsed back from their makeshift dinner. The rumbling of stomachs had been replaced with moans of satisfaction and mild regret. I don't think I'm hungry anymore. Blitz's cheeks puffed out mid-sentence, trying to contain what was attempting to exit the mouth. It was a losing battle, though. His lips parted as a thunderous belch echoed through the otherwise picturesque landscape. There was a long pause. The wind hesitated to continue. Perhaps it feared the scent of recycled apples. Dude, Dash finally said. Nice. She bursted out laughing, rolling onto the cloud. Blitz could do nothing but join her. By the time they finished cracking up, Blitz had a thought, for once. He propped himself onto his forelegs, facing his double. Hey Dash, did you hear the entire song that we performing with? Of course, she answered, giving a look. How would I know how to match our flying with the music if I've never heard it? Well, I never heard the whole thing. Do you, have a recording or something with the song on it? The mayor dissed his question with a wave. No need. I already know what we're doing. But how come I can never know what we're doing? I don't know. Maybe you should pay more attention. Blitz pouted and fell back onto his back. He mouthed Dash's words, mimicking her face with exaggerated silliness and malice. Dash could only grin, shaking her head and continuing to digest. Applejack could hear growling. That was something a farmer had to look out for. Although beasts were rare outside of the everfree forest, one might find its way to an apple tree occasionally. Fruit bats were the most common, though generically harmless. A few bigger animals ventured into the dwelling in the past, but they were promptly escorted out by Big Macintosh. Somewhere there was a manticore with a crooked tooth and a dent in its forehead. That one would not be returning. This, however, was a different growl. I think that's enough, Twi. You did your best. Applejack attempted to console the unicorn, but the growl intensified with her approach. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. Nothing was keeping Twilight but the pride and adrenaline. She no longer regarded the apples with courtesy. She was now facing it with full-blown rage. The bucket was empty. It should have been filled several times over by now. However, the latter had yet to bear, fruit. The ponies had started on the first tree they found and stayed there. 4 hours. Applejack winced as the unicorn set another volley of magic up to the stubborn crop. If any other pony raised a hoof to a tree in that way, they would not. If any other pony raised a hoof to the tree in any way that did not have to do with bucking, that pony would be missing a few teeth, courtesy of Kix McGee. However, Twilight had an air about her that threatened the worst pain that magic could buy. The purple energy struck home, directly on the fruit stem. It had force enough to sweep the legs out from under the pony after being forced into such a small point, turned from dangerous to downright lethal. It splashed against the rather thin fibers holding the apple onto the tree. It held, swinging mockingly on the branch. Twilight cried out in frustration, stomping her hooves. That was a spell they taught in self-defense class. She had to duel her sensei for the rights to learn it. They kept it in scrolls, hidden in a safe with 3 locks and 24 hours guard. There was a ceremony and everything. The apple deflected it for the umpteenth time that evening. Apples don't do that. Apples don't do that. Apples don't do that. She trailed off. Applejack finally managed to get close enough to try and calm her. Her muttering continued as she hung her head, ears chucked down. I'm sorry. I can't. Come on, Twi. It's fine. Let's get you home. You look beat. The earth pony led her down the trail towards the lights of the town. It's not alright. You asked for help, and I couldn't do it. Hey, you can't always give what some pony wants. You tried, and I'm mighty grateful for that. Applejack smiled at her lowered head. Twilight looked up at her, still miserable. I know. I just really wanted to help some pony. I just really wanted to give help when some pony asked. Sometimes it's just too hard to juggle everything. Heck, I couldn't even juggle one task. Applejack shrugged. That's the nature of this kind of things. Ain't nothing you can do about it. No need to feel sorry. Too bad there ain't two of you. That last remark went unnoticed at first. The farmer kept eyeing her companion, waiting for the greased-up gears in the unicorn's head to get a moving. Then, like a cuckoo clock striking midnight, her eyes widened, her ears shot up, she mouthed Applejack's last words. Sensing her cue, Applejack slowly changed her direction, heading back to the farm they just left. I'll see you later, Twi. Thanks for your help. She broke into a gallop away from the unicorn, who still did not change her pace or expression. Her gaze was fixated upon the ground the whole way home. She just kept muttering those words. 2 of me, she whispered as she approached the front door. 2 of me. Applejack stopped at the tree she had spent the day staring at. With a few marks around the pesky apples, some bark was missing here and there. When she got close enough, the apple flickered out of existence. There were clapping of hooves coming from darkness. A white unicorn struck out of the bush wearing a royal guard surplus flower headdress, as if there was such a thing. I applaud your improv, Applejack. Very subtle. She gave a wicked smile. Applejack just raised an eyebrow. Y'all trying to be dodgy with her? I see how that worked out. She raised a white hoof to her chest. Why, Applejack, I was being genuine. You truly have lovely acting skills. I was just about ready to shed a tear when you told her about not always being able to help. You can bet that will end up on a friendship report soon. The earth pony was still unconvinced. Unfortunately, there was no telling the intentions of this particular pony. Applejack decided to just assume she was, in fact, being genuine. Well, thanks. Your little illusion was pretty good, too. They were swaying. That was a nice touch. Was it? I feared it was going to be too much. Yeah, he was about ready to blow that tree clear to Cloudsdale. The unicorn carefully removed herself from the foliage, freeing her curly purple mane from its incredibly stylish hat. Do you think we're going to get through to her? Y'all didn't see your face. Either we're getting through to her, or she's rethought her life right in front of me. Might have been both. The white pony smiled again. That's what I like to hear. I guess we didn't need Fluttershy's part after all. After what Pinky did, she could hardly handle this one. I suppose you're right. She cantered past the orange apple farmer. I'll keep you and the others posted on any changes. All right. Pleasure working with you. Rarity turned her head to give an alluring flutter of the eyebrow. Isn't it, though? Eyelash thing. There was little to no desire to continue practicing after dinner. The air had grown cold now that the sun was fully gone. The food in their stomachs was likely to leave if they shook it all up. They settled on taking an abricated bath in the river before talking through the next portion of their act. The cold night is often underestimated. Even in the summers, temperatures go way down. If you grew up to the hot air, forget about it. You'd think you came down with frostbite. Try that feeling up to 100 meters in the air. Sure, it was far from those pesky predators, but it was also far from pleasant. And we'll end it there, I guess. Finished Dash, holding her limbs close to her center, wings curled around her with the feathers blocking the wind of the not. Blah, crap. Her wings curled around her with her feathers blocking the wind, if not the cold air. Blitz mimicked her stance. Great. Can we get some shut-eye now? Yes, please. I'm freezing here. They stood up and surrounded their luggage. Dash struck her head inside and produced two puffy sleeping bags. They each took one and tore it into them like a hungry Pinky with a pie. When the multicolored tornadoes faded, they were both wrapped in their sacks. They grimaced as they sluggishly paced up. They grimaced at the sluggish pace of their warmth. The blankets were cold to begin with. With their conscious minds preoccupied with discomfort, their deepest parts assisted their options. Talking, although it has been fun, it's not working. They shut it out every time. If they do something like shouting, perhaps a whisper will sway them. Their bodies refuse to bless them with comfort, given that the occasional lull in shivering. They tumbled around in their bindings uselessly. All the while, thoughts eased their way into their heads. Finally, they both sat up. It's pretty chilly out here, Dash said nonchalantly, not looking at her clone. Yeah, Blitz agreed. He shot her a glance. We should probably huddle together. For warmth, Dash specified. You know, since it's cold. Yeah. A long pause later, they wordlessly zipped their sleeping bags together. Each stood shivering over it with uncertainty. Dash started to settle in first. Blitz cautiously followed. Their coats brushed together. The warmth was immediate. Blitz suppressed a groan. Thankfully, his reddered face was not visible to her. The bag prevented his wings from noticeably flaring out, possibly humiliating him. They're wiggling deeper into the blankets, their skin rubbing together maddeningly. When they reached the end at last, they were completely submerged in the soft fabric and soft pony. Blitz threw caution to the howling wind and curled his forelegs around Dash's stomachs. She accepted them, tucking her wrist over his hooves. There was some wiggling and final adjustments, but they eventually reached their goal. Comfort. For the first time, neither of them were displeased with their position. When they settled down, Dash seemed to relax. She shut her eyes and rested her head on Blitz's shoulder. Although his throat went dry, he was in no rush to move away. He decided to just rest his head, tilting it so it was just right behind Dash's. It certainly was cozy. A sigh escaped from both of them. I'm kind of surprised he's not having any of those weird... I'm kind of surprised I'm not having any of those weird thoughts, thought Dash. This kind of thing usually starts them. Did something change? Wondered Blitz. Nothing felt different. She was just there next to him, and there was nothing weird about that. Dash opened her eyes to peek at him. The warmth was great, sure, but there were other benefits too. It's not like he's bad looking or anything. This is sort of nice. She didn't attempt to stop her wings. It was normal to unfurl them during sleep. It was actually a common cause of cramps in Pegasus. If they happened to brush against Blitz's, that was his problem. They did, but Blitz sure didn't have a problem with it. He was trying to ignore everything and sleep at this point. As much as he would have liked to keep contemplating this situation, there was work to be done in the morning. He buried his muzzle into her mane to block the wind. Yeah, that's definitely why. Then he happened to breathe. The smell wasn't quite fruity. It resembled some sort of plant. Maybe a flower? He continued to enhance. Why didn't we bring any shampoo or anything? Did that river just smell like that? It didn't make me smell like that. While pondering the origin of the scent, Blitz did not notice that he had slipped into a trance, his breathing quickening slightly, if only to take in more of Dash's mane. The mare, however, was in no trance. She felt the rustling of her mane as it destroyed her progress to sleep. Blitz, what are you doing? He didn't respond. He just nuzzled his way further into the green portion of her hair. He may have mumbled something, but it could have just been a moan. "Are you smelling my hair?" Sometime later, he gave a muffled affirmative, "Mm-hmm," he mumbled. Dash was hesitant to react. This was sort of weird. There was really only one thing to ask. "Why?" Blitz waited to inhale again. "Smells good," he said. His speech was rather slurred. Well, he answered her question. Not that it helped her understand at all. "That doesn't make any sense. It has to smell like sweat or something. Is he even awake?" She twisted around to see his grip so that she could face him. She then rotated their bed so that she was on top of him. His muzzle never left her even as she crawled up to his head. "Let's see what he's smelling. Or smell what he's smelling. Ugh, whatever." She lowered her snout onto his spiky mane and gave a tentative sniff. She could only describe it as like some weak perfume, except there was no point in that day which Blitz had access to perfume. Even she didn't put it on, and it was socially acceptable for her to do so. She doubled her male counterpart would even think of it. Dash kept smelling until she was in a trance as well. It definitely smelled good, and it wasn't like she was going anywhere. Blitz, meanwhile, was close to being smothered under her neck. Still, all he could think was, where did that smell go? He tightened his grip on the smell and started pulling it down to his nose. It tried to stop him, but not much. It seemed to be poking around him, trying to find a new spot to rest. Dash was experiencing the same issue, with her smelling, prodding his neck, approaching her face. She wrapped her hooves around its neck. Maybe she just wasn't close enough to smell it again. Blitz got the same idea, pulling on the smell's waist. Dash's mouth met something. It touched her lips, but still left empty space beyond that. She could no longer smell the smell. Maybe it tastes good too? She extended her tongue, trying to get a feel for where she was. It meant something else. It certainly didn't taste bad. The taste extended into her. Seemed like it was trying to get its bearings as well. They both kept fumbling around, actually enjoying the experience quite a bit. What is this even? Who? 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 What do you mean, who? Who? She opened her eyes to observe who, somewhat annoyed at the interruption. However, she couldn't see beyond Blitz's annoying eyes searching for who at the same time. Wait a minute, she thought. The gears were turning. Those damned sticky gears. Sweet Celestia, how were they even functioning? Oh, there we go. Blith? Dush? It was sort of hard to speak correctly with their tongues inside each other's mouths, so they parted. Blitz? Dash? Their eyes met as they tore violently away from one another. Oh my gosh, where were we? How did we? They each grabbed their heads and their hooves, screaming simultaneously, what the hell? And that was the end of this chapter. Until next time, bye.